Most people don't realize that you have never in your entire life seen reality. Every single moment that you've been awake is essentially your brain's best guess at reality, but it's not reality itself. It is actually a hallucination. And today we're going to talk about not just why that matters, why that fact matters more than almost anything that you've ever learned about your mind. There's a neuroscientist named Anil Seth who has spent essentially his entire career on this. And his findings are that your brain isn't just passively receiving the world, it's actually actively predicting what's out there. Every single moment, your brain runs a prediction about what reality probably looks like, and then matches that prediction against the data that's coming in through your various senses. When the prediction essentially matches what you see with your eyes, you have an image, then you see something in front of you. But when it doesn't, what's really fascinating is your brain actually adjusts and creates a new image based on its best guess of what's in front of you. So what he calls it is essentially a controlled hallucination. And there's a separate researcher called Donald Hoffman. He takes it even further, and he argues that perception didn't evolve to give us accurate information about reality. It evolved to give us useful information. And essentially your eyes are like an evolutionary user interface. They show you what helped your ancestors survive thousands of years ago, but they're not showing you what is literally there in front of you. They are not necessarily reflecting the most fundamental or true sense of reality as we know it. Once you start looking for this, the evidence is everywhere. Color isn't just a property of light. Light has wavelengths, but redness, for example, only lives inside of your skull. There's essentially a blind spot in each of our eyes that your brain is quietly filling in so that you don't notice it's there. It allows us to create this continuous experience of reality, which essentially is just stitched together from all of these different snapshots. Your eyes are jumping around 4 times a second if you didn't know it. And your brain is essentially editing the gaps of your vision out to create a cohesive image. What this means is what you call seeing is nothing more than your brain's best prediction. And when the prediction matches incoming data, you see. But you've never, not once, seen the actual thing itself. Here's the uncomfortable truth, which is they cannot give us any type of objective measurement of reality either. It's not that they can't give us accurate measurements, they're just not always objectively true. So let's take math, for example. The most logically airtight system that humans have probably ever built. And in 1931, a logician, his name was Gödel, proved something pretty devastating, which is any mathematical system that's complex enough to be useful in any sense of the word contains true statements that cannot be proven within that system. So what does that mean? It means that there's exceptions to every single system, even in mathematics. So it has blind spots that it can't see. And there is something developed called set theory, which shows that even basic operations only hold within specific contexts. 1 + 1 isn't always 2, as we're taught that it is in elementary school. It depends on the set. It depends on the set of context that those mathematical principles are defined within. So the most rigorous and logical structure humans have ever built has footnotes about its own limits. So now let's look at physics, and it's probably worse. At the smallest scales of reality, quantum mechanics essentially tells us that particles don't have definite properties until they're measured. They essentially just exist as probabilistic clouds. And even if we look at Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, it essentially locks in that some pairs of properties literally cannot be measured precisely at the same time. So the most precise predictive science that humans have ever built, that allows us to build skyscrapers and fly airplanes, describes reality in terms of probabilities, never certainties. And biology is essentially the same story. Every fundamental truth that we take for granted has its own anomalies about it. So there's something called sharism, which is people walking around with two distinct DNA sequences inside of one body, and both of them are genuinely theirs. Or there's this other one called situs innervis, where humans born with their organs mirrored on the other side. So people have hearts on the right side of their body. Or octopuses, even if we just look at the neural architecture of an octopus, it violates essentially every single rule that we have to define complex nervous systems in bodies. Every law in biology also has a footnote or an exception. Why I'm telling this to you is that if our most rigorous, evidence-driven, most precisely measured tools for understanding reality can't even deliver certainty, then what business do we have as human beings feeling certain about almost anything in our daily lives? And yet, what do we do every single day? We cling to certainty almost like we depend on it. We treat being sure as a virtue more often than not in modern culture. And we treat it as a signal of intelligence. We deploy it as a weapon in arguments. But what we're actually doing in those moments, and this, I believe, is the uncomfortable part, is we're choosing the feeling of solid ground over the true and real pursuit of truth. We're trading cognitive accuracy for emotional comfort, and we're picking false closure over real understanding. And the cost of that, the trade, is psychological, social, and it has massive historical implications all throughout history. First, curiosity fundamentally is, I'm gonna use some big words here, diametrically opposed to the presence of certainty. They are literally opposite mental states. The certain person essentially stops asking questions, and the curious person never stops asking questions. So what you have certainty about, you've essentially put a little fence around, and you don't go in there anymore because in your mind it's already checked off. You're already completely certain about it. And so because you don't update it, you don't grow. And second, certainty is the doorway, in my opinion, to actual psychosis. So real psychotic episodes often begin with absolute certainty about imagined facts. Things like I'm being followed or they're sending signals through the walls. The reason it ends in disaster is the content is delusional because the underlying posture of certainty without sufficient evidence is essentially a familiar bug that is running at full volume. And third, we have conspiracy. And conspiracy thinking runs on this same engine. And I'm talking about the unhealthy version. The unhealthy version of being obsessed with conspiracy theories isn't curiosity about whether something might be true. It's certainty that it is without the evidence to actually warrant it. In my mind, that is the real line. And this is where we get to the fourth one, where in my mind, history is the receipt. If you just look at most of the genocides or the wars, the atrocities humans have ever perpetrated, they were all carried out by people who became completely certain about something that there was never an adequate reason to actually be certain about. And obviously there's all kinds of other psychological factors at play here. And if we can agree that's true, then certainty has killed probably more humans than almost any internal state that you can think of. When you feel certain about something, anything at all, I want you to just ask yourself this one question. What would I have to see, hear, or experience to change my mind about this? And if your honest answer is nothing, then I promise you have slipped from belief into pathology. And that is the warning sign to stop. Another question that I think is great to ask yourself is, what if this thing wasn't true? What if there was an alternate version of what's actually taking place here? If you can, I want you to try it right now. Pick one thing that you're absolutely certain about. Maybe it's a political belief. Maybe a story that you tell yourself about your ex or your parents or your boss. Or maybe it's a belief about yourself. I would never, or I always. And I want you to ask that question and actually sit with the answer. Whatever comes up, I'm willing to bet that it is probably the most useful information that you're gonna get this week. And here's the part that I really want you to sit with. The reward for letting certainty go is that the world can start to become alive again. Curiosity is what children have that most adults have lost. And that doesn't have to die because you turned 25 or 40 or 60. It dies because somewhere along the way, we trade it for certainty, and it isn't. The people who actually moved the world forward in measurable ways were almost always the ones who managed to stay curious and who were able to walk around amazed by the world around them. So my invitation to you is to stay childlike, because the world is more interesting that way. And honestly, so are you.
Look, I know you don't want to watch another ad. I don't blame you, but I have seen this change too many lives to just let you scroll past it. There's a moment that most people have where something feels off in a conversation and we ignore it. And it's not because you're wrong, but it's just because we don't trust what we're seeing. And that's where all of this starts. NCI Level 1 isn't about learning a bunch of tricks. It's about finally understanding what you've been noticing your whole life already. You start to see behavior a lot more clearly. The body language, the emotional shifts, the intent that's behind someone's actions. So you don't guess anymore. You read what's going on. You understand what's going on. And you can actually respond with precision. Most people ignore what they see. This is where you learn to trust it. NCI 1 is a foundational course in behavior profiling, and the link is right down in the description.